So, I think it's safe to say that 2020 was a very strange year, especially in the NFL. We had the Oakland Raiders completing their relocation to Las Vegas, now playing in the Allegiant Stadium. We saw the Washington Redskins finally retire their name and logo, becoming the Washington football team for the season after multiple decades of controversy. Finally, the biggest impact of all was that thing that prevented us from hanging out with friends and family. It affected the season tremendously. It cancelled all preseason games and the Pro Bowl, suspended all international games for the year. For the most part of the season, games were played with zero fan attendance. The NFL also gave players the option to opt out of the season, which 67 players decided to do so. Not to mention we also had the postponements of games due to positive tests. And on top of all of that, we have to deal with the new collective bargaining agreement which was announced in March. Quite notably, it made the 2020 NFL season the first one in history to have 14 teams qualify for the playoffs. Also, it made the 2020 season the last season to have a 16-game regular season, as it's moving to 17 games next season. But I'm not going to be talking about those lucky 14 teams that made the postseason. They got enough praise and attention as they rightly deserved. This series, I'm going to be talking about those unlucky 18 teams who had to watch football home in January. What exactly went wrong with their season? And did anything actually go right? Do they have anything to look forward to? I'll be looking at that and more, so why don't you join me as I review their 2020 season. On this episode, we'll be taking a look at the 2020 season of the Houston Texans. Yo, what's going on everybody? It's your boy Andrew, and thanks for coming back and tuning in to another episode of my 2020 NFL season review. Quick, before we get into the video, make sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok at SportsButCasually to keep up with things that I do outside of YouTube. And don't forget to like the video, share it with anybody you really want to, and subscribe to the channel so you'll never miss when I drop another episode. And with all of that out the way, let's get into episode 3, the 2020 season review of the Houston Texans. Unlike the first two teams we talked about this series, the Texans had tremendous success this past decade. This included 6 AFC division titles to go along with 6 playoff appearances. During this period, they've been led by a daunting defense which included players like J.J. Watt, Whitney Mercilus, Jadeveon Clowney, and Jonathan Joseph. And it seemed that the Texans would have continued that upward path ever since they traded up to select their QB of the future, Deshawn Watson. Even with them losing key players like Dwayne Brown and Jadeveon Clowney, they always seem like they'll be a playoff-bound team. But since you're watching this video, you already know that this season didn't go so well for them. So let's get into what went wrong for them. In the 2020 free agency, the Texans lost another key piece on defense, DJ Reader, to the Bengals. But in terms of signing, they didn't really do much. I don't know, besides give a big contract to 30-year-old Randall Cobb for some reason that I still don't know. But before we get into the 2020 draft, we need to talk about the amount of bloody trades they made that absolutely gutted their draft capital for this draft and the next one. First, in 2019, they traded away their first round pick this year and their 2021 first and second round pick to the Dolphins for Laramie Tunsil and other assets. I mean, Laramie Tunsil turned out to be a great left tackle, but sheesh. Then, in March, they traded away arguably the best wide receiver in the league in DeAndre Hopkins to the Cardinals for only a second round pick and a running back that hasn't been good since 2016. Honestly, this still blows my mind. And finally, to make up for the loss of DeAndre Hopkins, they traded their second round pick this year to the Rams for Brandon Cooks. So all these trades that went down were the reason that the Texans only had 5 selections in the 2020 draft. None of them really contributed much this season, but I guess Jonathan Greenard looks like he has potential to be good. When it comes to the players that opted out of the 2020 season, the Texans only had one, which was Eddie Vanderdoes. In terms of attendance for the season, Houston announced that they won't have fans at their home opener, but soon announced after that from week 4 onwards, they'll have fans in attendance. Around 13,000 to be exact, which is more or less 20% of the total capacity of NRG Stadium. To kick off the season, the Texans had the distinct pleasure of playing the first game of the 2020 season against the defending champions, the Kansas City Chiefs, where they proceeded to get ran out of Arrowhead Stadium. It was clear that this Texans team was no longer the great defensive team that we were all accustomed to it being. The Texans started the season 0-4. This was their first 0-4 start since the 2008 season. It was this and what seems to be like a billion horrible moves that caused the Texans to fire their head coach and GM, Bill O'Brien. Thank God. Also, what kind of led to Bill O'Brien's firing were reports that he got in a fight with Mr. Houston Texan himself, J.J. Watt. And it would have been funny to see because, a big Hulk like J.J. Watt just ragdolling O'Brien around. Does seem kind of funny. Kind of like Hulk low-key kind of vibes. They named assistant head coach Romeo Crennel as the interim head coach, which made him the oldest head coach in NFL history at 73 years old. So congrats to him. They also promoted Jack Easterby to be their interim GM. He was the vice president of football operations for them. But unfortunately, the firing of Bill O'Brien came too late, as they finished the season with a 4-12 record, which included them losing their last 5 games. They also conceded 30 or more points 8 times this season. Another interesting and also heartbreaking thing is that 8 of their losses were by 8 or less points. Yikes. Well, let's get into some of this season's highlights, or should I just say lowlights. First, after week 10 loss to the Browns, they failed to win 10 or more games for the first time since the 2017 season. And after a week 14 loss to the Bears, they were officially eliminated from playoff contention. To add insult to injury, this loss also signified the Texans' first losing season since 2017. When we look at the stats for this season for the Texans, you can see that their defense really struggled. A shell of its former self, to say the least. And their offense, 16th overall, does seem a little bit inflated because it was just Deshawn Watson doing superhuman things to keep them relevant and competitive. As you can see, 4th in passing yards per game, 8th in passing touchdowns, but when you get to the rushing game, 31st and 30th, you could tell that it was just a one-man show. Onto the defense now, 27th overall. 30th in yards per game. Whoa, they just got ran all over this season. Last in the league in rushing yards per game. And last in interceptions per game. No turnovers whatsoever. The advanced stats on offense for the Texans show that they did a decent job, below average job converting when they need to be. The advanced stats on defense, however, just show that they just had a lack of pressure. They weren't able to bring down the quarterback for a sack. They were blitzing but couldn't really hurry him or pressure him. It's just tough. Even when you have J.J. Watt on your team, you still need other good pass rushers to help get to the quarterback. Now, let's move on to something more positive as I give this team's offensive and defensive MVP. For their offensive MVP, it's really a no-brainer. It's their quarterback, Deshawn Watson. He was the only reason this team was competitive this season, and he made the most out of the weapons he had in his first season without DeAndre Hopkins. He set career highs in passing yards, touchdowns, completion percentage, and passer rating. And he also led the league in passing yards. He was third in completion percentage, and he tied for 7th in the league in passing touchdowns. Not a bad season if I do say so myself. Now, picking their defensive MVP was pretty difficult since their defense was really garbage, but I decided to go with linebacker Zach Cunningham. He could be seen as the only real bright spot for this defense, as he had a career year. He set career highs in total tackles, solo tackles, QB hits, and sacks. He got his big money deal before the season started and lived up to that contract. He led the league in tackles and solo tackles, which is very impressive. At the end of the season, the Texans had 2 Pro Bowlers selected, QB Deshawn Watson and left tackle Laramie Tunsil. Now, buckle up everybody, because the 2021 offseason for the Houston Texans is a lot to digest. Firstly, they hired Nick Caserio to be their new general manager, after he spent 20 seasons with the Patriots. Then, on the 27th of January, they hired David Culley to be their head coach. He previously spent the last 2 seasons with the Ravens, but he was a wide receiver coach and a passing game coordinator. And since the Ravens have always been a run-first team, I can't say I'm too confident in the hiring. But he does become the 4th African American head coach in the league, so congratulations to him. But literally the day after the hiring, and an entire January month filled with rumbling that he wants out, QB Deshawn Watson officially requested a trade. Now, there are multiple reasons why he's grown tired with the Houston Texans, but that's going to be too long, and I kind of already went through some of them in a video I did previously, so I'd link that to the top of the screen. But Deshawn Watson's offseason does take a very dark turn, as on March 16th, a massage therapist from Houston filed a lawsuit against him alleging sexual assaults and inappropriate conduct. As of April 5th, the number of lawsuits against him and women that have came out stood at 22. We don't know what's going on, what the verdict will be, or if he'll play football in 2021. I'll leave a link to the timeline of these events in the description. However, in free agency, their woes did continue, as arguably the greatest Texan ever, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, J.J. Watt, left the franchise to sign with the Arizona Cardinals. And also, to add insult to injury, arguably the best receiver, Will Fuller, left and signed with the Miami Dolphins. In terms of cap space for free agency, the Texans were able to roll over $9.2 million from last season to give them a total cap space of $24.5 million, which they used to sign a total of 33 free agents, wow, to small and short deals. They hope to get good contributions this season from guys like Jordan Jenkins, Philip Lindsay, Mark Ingram, and Tyrod Taylor, providing he becomes the starting quarterback for them this season. In the 2021 draft, the Texans, as stated before, didn't have their first or second round pick and only wound up making 5 selections. So after a very eventful 2021 off seasons, for all the wrong reasons I might add, the Houston Texans seem like they're spiraling out of control. So I expect their 2021 season to be pretty rough. I looked at their schedule, my predictions for them, 3-14 record. But guys, that wraps us up. That was episode 3, talking about the Houston Texans. Next episode, we'll be talking about the 2020 season of the Atlanta Falcons. So until then, you guys, make sure to like the video, share with a friend, and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys for episode 4. Take care.